Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Employment First monthly community of practice. I'm Amy Dessenberg-Wines. I help manage the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment. And I couldn't be more delighted to introduce Tyler Hansen. And hopefully many of you have met Tyler or know Tyler. If you don't, I have to say that Tyler, from the moment, Tyler, I met you and had my first conversation with you, I thought there is a shining star and a true leader in our profession. And I am just so excited to continue to work with you and really appreciate you making time today to come and talk to our community of practice. Tyler is the employment specialist with Money Follows the Person. No one thought Sue-Ann Morrow could be replaced, and Tyler surprised all of us because he also brings just this wealth of enthusiasm and creativity and knowledge to the work that he's doing with Money Follows the Person. So I'm going to turn this over to Tyler, and I am going to put in the chat link to the presentation if you're interested. Sorry, I'm letting a couple people in. And feel free, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand, and Tyler will also just open it up when it's time for questions. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Tyler.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I truly was gonna I thought I was gonna struggle with replacing Sue-Ann Morrow because she was so great at what she did too. So you and me both thought she couldn't be replaced. So still big shoes to fill, but here we are, and we're moving forward as everybody does. So I will get started. Kind of what we're gonna go over a lot is what MFP is, some of the things that I'm seeing across the state as issues and barriers. Ways to think outside the box, push you to think outside the box as well, and then also talk about some things that I'm working on, projects that I need some responses on, as well as your input, and to see interest and how we can all grow as a state of Iowa. So let's get started. So sorry, Brooke, Money Follows the Person, so she's probably like you can take a snooze for about 10 or 15 minutes as I explain what Money Follows the Person is. So Money Follows the Person is a demonstration grant that started in 2008. Many of you may know that it was a program that was going to sunset, and as of now we're growing and duplicating, and I think we're up to 11 or 12 transition specialists. We're going to grow, I think, to 14 or 15. We have 3 behavioral specialists, and then we have 1 employment, and soon to be 1.5. So we'll be hiring another person. So the transition people that we work with come from qualifying facilities such as ICFIDs, so intermittent care facilities for persons with intellectual disabilities, nursing facilities, psychiatric medical institutes for children, inpatient hospitalizations. And to qualify for MFP, you have to have been in a qualifying facility of those for 60 plus days, 60 consecutive days, sorry, not, so it can't be 10 days, then out of the hospital, then another 10 days. It has to be 60 consecutive with the BI or ID diagnosis, and on Medicaid type that carries a long-term supports and services benefit. So what does the MFP Employment Specialist do, and why do we get employment into our services? Because other states don't have employment integrated into their MFP program. So kind of what my role is to I kind of tiered it down from top to bottom. What I feel is the most important is I work with individuals on a case management responsibility. So making sure that they are connected with their providers, voc rehab, Iowa workforce development, anything that benefits planners, whatever we feel that is person-centered to support them with their goals. Self-employment's also a journey that we look at, but that's my role is to support with managing those cases and getting them into the services that they need. Also, I feel like rating services funding streams is very important because voc rehab can fund services that the waiver cannot, and vice versa. So I need to make sure that we are looking at the service streams that we can implement and use to support with their goals. So that's why funding streams is one of the top ones there. Supporting the employment team from voc rehab, the provider, the case manager, sending paperwork out to them to make sure that they have all the information that they need, as well as answering any questions on, where they're at in their transition plan, helping the case managers with documentation to get referrals out. That's another part of my role, is to help coordinate. And as well, some case managers still struggle with understanding the difference between job coaching and job development. So helping with understanding the funding streams and making sure that they are funding the right service. Technical assistance and guidance for the employment journey. Kind of people on here, employment specialists, they think, oh, he probably does direct services. I'm sorry, I wish I could. That's kind of the bread and butter of what I've done before, but I am here to support all 99 counties. So it's hard for me to do job development, and you guys are really the, what your area is like, the employers, your folks and how to support them. I'm there to help you think outside the box, talk through some barriers that you're coming across, give you a little bit of perspective on how to support the person, just implement different ideas and support accommodations, plan writing. That's where I'm there for. Specific technical assistance as well. If somebody needs a little bit more training, we can have a sit down conversation with your job coach, job developer, employment specialist, the employment team at the provider, and talk about how to best support them. As you know, a lot of folks I'm working with are coming out of like Glenwood, Woodward, and they do have co-occurring disabilities, and best way to support them is they're coming from such a structured environment. So as they go into those HCBS services, we need to make sure that they are supported long-term, and there are different things that we have to do to implement a success for the folks. As well as capacity building, talking about community of practices that are implemented, talking to the providers, seeing what you guys are really struggling with, what I'm struggling with, conversations. I mean, we can't build capacity unless we know what's going on in each area. What's happening in Des Moines, Iowa is not the same as to what's happening in Northeast Iowa. So we have to understand. So that's where capacity comes in. And then employer relationship building, talking about accommodations, going out to the employer to help support the individual on their work site, talking to chambers of commerce about disability etiquette and DEI. Those types of conversations is where I would say employer relationship building comes into play. Usually that's at the last part of their stages with me, but that's how we make sure that they are set up long-term, building those natural supports. So under our MFP umbrella, we have, a couple categories of transition specialists, which their role is primarily to get them moved out of the facility, supporting, set up with the home services, whether it's a 24-hour service, host home, back into their own house, home modifications, setting up with services in their area. So if anybody has moved recently, going from, I moved from Newton to Des Moines, you have to set up all new things, dentists, primary care physicians, the whole ordeal. They plan really intricate moves, and they have a lot of good supports and setups and processes that they follow through. The behavioral support specialist, is a BCBA, and they write behavioral plans to support the individual with making sure that they are set up for success in their HCBS setting as well as in their community. So we'll go into a lot of their details, but they do a lot of follow-ups, same as I do, to make sure that we are giving them the supports in their area. Learned a little bit about myself as what the employment specialist does. And then under that, we also have, budgets to help support with that. So I kind of put training and support reimbursement under there as well, which we'll talk about. So the MFP has a budget up to $1,000 for the client to support with staff wages and mileage. And that's an example of this would be a job coach and a job developer meeting from the community provider. So wherever you're working at, met with, let's say Glenwood was to send out their Voc staff, and they trained you on how to best support them. And you had to drive out there, and it, was so many miles, we could pay up to $1,000 for reimbursement of that. In order to have that, you do have to have identified that in the plan pre-transition, and make a timeline as to when that would occur. So there are some other stipulations that we'd have to work around to get that approved, especially with wait lists and stuff around with the agencies. But that's something that we can talk about. So I like to briefly touch on it because those are resources that really support setting up the person for success with training, having conversations, because not a lot of the times you get a referral, you get a person and you move forward. You don't have a lot of time to really get to know that person and, through services as well as you would like. And this is an opportunity to allow that. Say under that additional resources of the umbrella of MFP, typically we're working with lots of folks on our team. If anybody's been on an MFP team, all staff, like an all team meeting, it could range from 5 or 6 people up to 20. It just depends on how, who you're getting. But the additional resources that we have is, the community-based case manager that we'll be working with through the MCO, the facility-based case manager also through the MCO that has worked with them for however long they've been in that qualifying facility, the social worker, facility direct care staff, and I'm saying that from where they have come from, the community direct care staff, so the place where they're an HCBS, so they're SCL provider, Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services, so counselors that we've worked with within the work side, their guardians are pretty involved at times, parole officers, if they have a parole officer, they also get waiver funding, and then also that resource budget from home modifications, clothing. I don't know all the details on that, but the transition specialists deal with a lot of that, and they have a budget specifically to support the person to get back into the community. And if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer any of those down the road. Email, call, and I would connect you with the right person. Are there any questions on what MFP does before I get moving on to the next steps? I'm not seeing anything, so I'll keep moving. So there was an article that I read, and it was from the Harvard Business Review, and they talk about being curious. Our job is to be curious when working with a lot of the individuals that we're working with. So it creates different outcomes. So the benefits that they had written in here were fewer decision-making errors because you're able to ask questions, know what had gone on previously in their past as well as currently. Innovation and creativity as well. Allowing somebody to be curious allows somebody to think outside the box. It just allows, it makes sure that people can try new things as well as create more outcomes. Open communication, that kind of goes hand in hand with being curious because you're going to ask a lot of how, what, why questions. So having that open communication allows people to build the relationships as well as create outcomes for them. Increase performance around the benefits. That kind of goes hand in hand with the open communication one I just talked about, but you'll see people, have more buy-in and you'll see better outcomes. Some barriers that they had wrote in here about being curious were having the wrong mindset. Am I asking the questions because I want to know how to best support the person, or am I asking the questions just because I want to know their story and be a little bit in the know of what's going on. Am I looking at barriers that they have come across? Am I looking at best way to support them? The other side was seeking efficiency to the detriment of exploration. And all that's saying is just, are we trying to skip, cut corners when being curious? Like, can we actually do this instead of doing that? So I just wanted to kind of go in there a little bit about how do we develop curiosity, apply a beginner's mindset, be open-minded to look for new and novel ways of doing things. Don't just assume you know what's going on, because each person has a different story. The folks that we work with are people too, and what's on their social history does not always define who they are. We'll find social histories that really follow them for a long time and create barriers for them. Ask questions and listen and observe. Seek first to understand what's going on. That way you allow yourself to be open-minded to the person. Trying something new, this is take a different route, go to work, read a new book that you usually wouldn't. Just go outside your own comfort zone. And this kind of goes hand in hand with job development. Don't we typically go outside of something that we would usually go to, or aren't we going to new places for the folks that we're working with to create person-centered planning and practices? So be inquisitive, asking others for their opinions and perspectives and their approaches to certain things. Not just because Tyler does it this way means it's the right way. Not just because this has happened in the past is the right way to do things. Ask questions, learn, grow, and that's what curiosity can do. It can create some really great outcomes for who we're working with. So where am I seeing issues for folks that I'm working with? We're getting lost in the system typically with these three areas, and those are behaviors, sexual social history, and the imposed barriers on readiness. So I'm going to go a little bit into each of those categories later and talk about different ideas and resources to support that. So under behaviors, we are going to, we tend to have a lot of people cycle through the system. They go in, they apply for a provider, and they're not accepted due to the type of behavior that they're having. So we tell them, well, we'll wait about 3 months. We'll give you 3 months. If you have no behaviors between now and 3 months, then we'll look at, working with you. Well, that tends to then turn into, I had a behavior 2 months ago. I guess we're gonna have to reset for 3 months. So we'll see you in another 3 months. And I'd say that it's a cycle, because wouldn't you get annoyed and frustrated sitting at home for 3 months waiting for a service that you have already requested? I requested going to employment services, and I have asked about it for months and months and months, and it's the same answer. You will get there when you get there. Eventually you're going to get frustrated yourself. I know my wife would my wife and I would bother each other for about a couple months, and if we were in the same house, then we'd have what we call a behavior. I'd have a behavior. So we can't just assume that we can put these parameters on folks for behaviors. Now we're going to hit on a little bit of sexual social history. This one's always tough, because there's policies that people have in their programs. There's pasts. Our minds go to the worst thing possible when we talk about sexual social history. We assume it's something that our culture and our society has really, pushed negative thoughts and feelings on. It's not easy to work with somebody when you know the past, but that's what we're here to do. We're here to work with the folks to support them with employment. And my conversation around employment first is, if the person says they want to work, they should work and they can work. That's my goal. Even if they have the largest barriers, I am going to, do my best to move mountains. My brain may fry a few times. Not to hit my head against the wall just to think of different ideas and come up with new topics, but I have to be open to working with somebody with sexual social history. But anyway, just going back onto it, 9 out of 10 times when I work with somebody with that, once I get the referral in, I am getting a decline. 9 out of 10 times. And of those 9 times, I will follow up with the provider to talk about why and what their social history looks like, answer any questions. Maybe we get a conversation with the administration person or admissions person, maybe, or we get, no answer and we sit back and we reassess and look at other options. Or unfortunately, sometimes that can be the only provider in the area, which then does not give them services. So what do we do now? What if we look at? There's other options, CCO, granted, but that's also difficult to do. So how can we support individuals with sexual social histories? Because they are also individuals that need services as well. Impose barriers on readiness. That's a conversation around, well, I talked with Jim and Jim said he was going to meet me at 9 o'clock in the morning and Jim didn't show up to work or show up to my meeting. So he's not ready for work. I'm done. We're done with services. He's canceling services. Or Jim has inappropriate behaviors. He's not ready for work. Jim has never worked in his life. He's not ready for work. Jim doesn't have a filter on what he says. He's not ready for work. His soft skills, I can go on, is what I'm trying to prove a point there. We're imposing barriers on folks under their work if they're ready for work. And I'm not pointing fingers at providers. I'm not pointing fingers at voc rehab. I'm not pointing fingers at case managers. I think us as a whole need to think about readiness for work totally differently. So let's talk a little bit more about behaviors with this timeline of behaviors of 6 months, 3 months, whatever it looks like. We hear the conversation of, well, if it's a major behavior, let us know. Then we'll have to reset 3 months. Well, what I define as a major behavior and what you define as a major behavior are two totally different things. Is it he had an outburst in the community? Does that reset the timeline? Was he physically aggressive? He or she physically aggressive? What are we defining as behaviors? We are also putting these expectations on people to wait and change themselves when supported employment could really be an answer for them. Supported employment can make a huge difference in your life of purpose, mental health. Services like IPS exist. People they can wake up for the day and know that they have something to do and they can bring a meaningful day. The guy that I'm currently working with that calls me, texts me, every seems like every couple of hours. And he is wanting work. He had been working recently, got laid off, and his mental health is declining, and sending some pretty interesting text messages is what I'll say. Last conversation I had was, suicide is not off the table. Holy cow. Extreme. And he previously was physically violent to staff, verbally violent. And when he got a job, everything was going great and dandy. And things changed for him. It was uplifting. But that was a totally different person 30 days from not having work to having work, and now he's not having work, and you can see those behaviors coming back. Why can't work be that service to support them, like we talk about, employment first kind of mindset? We're missing that currently in the state to support people in that level. So as we talked about curiosity, I have at the bottom, instead of reluctance to supporting somebody with behaviors, do we ask questions of what happened? Why did this behavior occur? Was there a conflict within the home? What triggered this behavior? Was it an approach that was taken by the support staff? Was the person being talked to degradingly? What were these antecedents? What led up to the behavior? The questions of why and what will give you a lot of good information. We have to be open to asking those questions. So I put a little bit of resources in here. Use the people that are working with them. The supported community living provider is going to give you a lot of information. Get a release, talk with them, see how you can learn. Or if not, the case manager will have that information too. Talk with them, see what happened, see what led up to that. Don't allow behaviors to stop somebody from working. Behavioral specialists, do they have a BCBA involved? Connect with them. MFP has one, and if we do have them connected, we will gladly let them talk with you and support you as well as an employment provider to make sure the person's set up. Do they have a counselor? And I'm just saying, just a voc rehab counselor, do they have a counselor that they're going to support with and talk to about these things? If not, then we're not doing our due diligence to make sure that they're set up for success. As employment providers, it's not our role to get them counselors, but it is a good idea to talk about having supports for our mental health. And that's what a counselor can do. Elevate, I put that in there, and I actually forgot they're called provider supports now. So they're a behavioral program as well. They go around the state. So I apologize, provider supports, but they're also a great resource in there. They used to also be called iStart. So if you've heard iStart, Elevate, provider supports, they're all similar. So sexual social history. These are also hard because when did they occur? Is this person on the registry? That's the first question I'm wondering, because I have people that have sexual social histories and it follows them and they have extreme restrictions due to that. But if are they on the registry, that adds another layer of barriers. What restrictions are in place? So do we talk to the parole officer to really know what it is? Because if anybody has worked with somebody with a sexual social history, they may know that they may have internet restrictions. They may have restrictions around being around minors. So what have we done differently? So if we know we can't work around minors, could we look at places that don't have that? That they have to hire anybody over the age of 18. They're working with a team, they're not on their own. Do the employers have cameras and surveillance systems? It's funny how technology can actually help an individual with these, so it's not a he said, she said moment. I had a person that wants to work, but he's scared currently to work during the summer because he's scared that he's going to be around a teenage girl and he's going to get a finger pointed at him because he is on the registry. Those are fears that they have, and we're here to be supports and make sure that they know that we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that you get the services that you need and are safe and are not set up for that kind of conversation and that kind of pressure. Because I can't even imagine what they go through every single day, the remorse that I get people calling and saying, I'm so sorry. And they tell the story, I ask because I have to know how to best support them, and the remorse in their eyes. Intellectual disabilities. I kind of put in there, people with intellectual disabilities are the highest people with sexual social histories. And a lot of them either have an ID diagnosis, but they struggle. And this is a conversation. These are points that I've had from folks that have told me directly. They struggle to tell the difference between the age of, a teenager and 20, 30-year-olds. They can't tell the difference. She, they just don't know the difference. The also thing is I'm also reminded that they want to have meaningful relationships. And sometimes they push that boundary and it turns into the sexual social history that follows them after that. So then they're identified as they have pedophilia and all these other different labels. So it's not always fully accurate, but we put that information into their social history that really struggles to then get them the services that they need. And then the next point is, are your hands tied by your policies at your agency? Do you want to support somebody with sexual social histories? We're all here to support individuals with disabilities to get employment. And we're really missing a group of people because they have this overseeing them. I mean, it's shadowing them. It shadows their limiting to employment. And we should not limit somebody because of those pasts. So how can we move forward? People change, it may have happened 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago or more, and it's still following around. People change, and it could have been when they were younger, 18, 19. The other question is, can and will your CEO or board change the policy? Questions, change doesn't happen overnight. We have to ask the questions to our department heads, then ask our higher ups to see if we can change that. And if you're really passionate about doing that and supporting all individuals with disabilities and really not skipping anybody, that would be a conversation I'd highly recommend people to have. It's not an easy conversation. It's really, it's a sensitive conversation, but it does need to be done. And if you're serious about having those conversations and need some help, I'd be more than willing to talk a little bit more about it and giving some examples of how it can empower folks to live their best lives. Just kind of another little bit of resources from it. Talk to the case managers and social workers, learn more about them. If you don't know what the history is, look it up. There's Iowa courts online. Those are some things to have information on. The probation officer will also give you a lot of good information. So don't be afraid to talk to them. They're always willing to share information. The other thing is Iowa Workforce Development tends to have a lot of partners, and they will share who they're open to hiring. And if they have criminal backgrounds, they have lists of employers that will hire that. So reach out to those places. They should have some information to help you. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more on the imposed barriers on readiness. So missed meetings, limited job history, social skills, and their behaviors. Those are all things that I've heard recently into why somebody's not ready. Let's go to missing meetings. So did we change the day that somebody missed the meeting? Did we change the hour instead of having it 9 o'clock in the morning to an afternoon time like they had previously requested? Are we doing our meetings based off of our availability or their availability? We need to plan to support the individual, and sometimes we have to be flexible on our own schedules. Limited job history. Instead of figuring out what they've been doing for work, and if they haven't worked, ask them what they've been doing instead. Have they been day have for months to years? Have they been working on themselves to get themselves ready for work? A lot of the folks go through quite a bit of conversations before they get into employment services with the provider. They talk with their case manager. They talk with their voc rehab counselor to make sure that they're getting to that point. And then when they say they're ready for work, we're getting them to the providers to support. So their limited job history may have depended on their experience as well in high school, where they're at in a facility, or if they were in specific services like day hab or SEL and didn't explore work previously. Social skills. This person doesn't have soft skills or hard skills or that they're ready for work. So why should we get them into a work setting? Well, my conversation would be, don't we adapt to our own environments? Don't we talk to people? Don't we go around people that we want to be like? And don't we want to impress people as humans? Social skills come through experience. And sometimes we have to learn through experience, and sometimes failure is the best teacher. So why don't we give the person the opportunity to go into a social environment and learn firsthand instead of explaining things in a classroom type style on social skills. Behaviors, talked about that a little bit earlier, time imposed. My conversation around it would be employment can be a positive impact on that person's life and decrease the behaviors. it's just, I've seen multiple experiences of it, and once you see it, you will be forever changed. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call have had examples of people with learned about behaviors and saw a night and day difference between the person. And it's also folks that want to prove themselves. So they want to prove that they can do it. So they'll do everything in their power to show their SCL staff, their case manager, their guardian, myself, that they can work and they are ready to work. So I'm going to talk about 5 different services that I've been really implementing and using to make sure that folks are ready for, are doing their work services to best support them. Individuals do come out of facility-based settings, and they may move halfway across the state. They may move out of their facility, but not know their area still. So we utilize these services to allow them to get ready. So when I talked earlier about grading services, this is what I'm talking about, because customized discovery, IPS, work readiness assessments, and job shadows cannot be funded through waiver, but I can fund career exploration. So when I get a voc rehab counselor and customized discovery is ready and available, I would highly recommend those, because it allows the person to really get to know their environment, get to know their area, the provider gets to know them. They get to try out different things, because the answer is, where would you like to work? Well, where are the last 3 places that the person had probably gone? Which grocery store, fast food place? We tend to do the same things, Hy-Vees, Fairways, grocery stores, cleaning places. Thinking outside the box for them. IPS is a mental health based practice and service, and it's an evidence-based practice. So it's really, I recommend that. I'm going to be using it for a few folks as I'm so excited that IPS has made its way over to the Glenwood and Council Bluffs area, where a lot of folks that I'll be trying to get them started with that. Work readiness assessments allow somebody to do a hands-on training and learning on how to do a job. They're using that. Job shadows, if they're not a hands-on type of person, they wanted to see it, I use that instead. Career exploration is the same thing. So if I don't have voc rehab involved, we'll use career exploration to do those types of services. So any comments, questions about what we have just kind of gone over recently? I know I talked a lot at you. Any feedback would be great. What you guys are seeing, what you guys are thinking. And if there are none, I'm going to use you guys to give me some more feedback anyway soon. So
Just want to add, I guess, confirm, Tyler, from my experience as well, that some of those barriers that or obstacles that kind of get in the way for folks, especially around the behaviors and work readiness, it seems to be a consistent problem in preventing folks from being able to explore and move forward with employment. And we really have seen a lot of evidence over the years with how employment helps with, really helps with individuals' health, can help with behaviors, as well as it just always makes me laugh and think about the fact that I wasn't ready for work when I started work. Most of us were. I mean, we didn't have assessments on if, we had experiences, and all along the way, hopefully you're growing and developing both your interpersonal skills as well as your technical skills. So I just really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think we get stuck, and it's, we really know from just over the course of time that the best way to address some of those issues and concerns are for people to have the experiences.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't ready for my job when I first started, but here we are, from Fairway to MFP, quite the process to get there, but everybody learns on their way. So if you were to ask me when I was in high school if I was going to be doing this type of work, I wasn't mature enough to do this type of work. I had to grow, right? So that's how we all learn, and the folks will learn from experiences that we work with. But I will get going on to the next part. So I put in here, which is, what is a SWOT? And the reason I'm explaining you to what a SWOT is so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And my goal of the SWOT, and I'll get you to the slide that will have the QR code and the link, and will send it out later, is to gather enough information around what is going on in the state for all Iowans with disabilities to get employment services, as well as what you're seeing on the ground from all different angles. Get it from case managers, voc rehab counselors, DSPs, managers, to have a understanding of what is going on. And this goal is to get the information. Currently, we have 109 respondents, and we are missing a lot of the DSPs and the providers information. We got a lot of case managers and other, but I'd love to hear from everybody else so I can have a full, well-rounded approach on what is going on in the state. Because the goal, what we're going to do is take this information, turn it into a one-pager. Hopefully it'll be one pages, but if we have 109 respondents already, it's going to be probably a little bit longer, but we're going to try to get all the information compiled into one to share with legislators and stakeholders to know what is going on. Because you and me know it so well, but we need to educate others on what is happening and how we can do better in our services. And it's a good time to also look at ourselves. What are we missing? What are we doing good? What are we doing bad? And it's growth is challenging. It's uncomfortable, but we have to be a little bit uncomfortable to be better. So that's what this SWOT is for. It's for us to reflect, to learn. This is all anonymous, so you're not going to have it's not going to have your name on it. I am going to plan on gathering that information on the Qualtrics survey that's going to be attached. I will then send it out to the communities like IC, APSI, IACP, MFP's group, IVRS, case managers, and then we'll push it back out to providers as well. So everybody should get their report eventually, but I'm just trying to make sure that nobody just know your information is anonymous. It's not going to be held. Tyler said this, so we should go back to Tyler because he was dogging on IVRS on something for whatever reason. But so this is the only time I'll allow you to get your phones out. Actually, there are two. So you can get your phone out and take a quick scan of this QR code and you can complete the SWOT. If you've already completed it, you do not have to, unless you feel like there's more information that you want to add in there. But yeah, please, feel free to complete that SWOT analysis and scan it. I'll give you guys a couple more seconds to do that, and I will send out we'll be sending out the link as well for notes on this presentation. I will give you a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In the next conversation, something that we're working on is a technology community of practice. Right now, it's a partnership between Easter Seals and the USED. We are piloting with we have 10 folks that have shown interest. We have 18 or 19 that have showed interest. We have invited 10 folks to join the community of practice for the next 3 months. We actually had our first one today to talk about technology in the workplace. Super exciting. I would like to see it grow. There are things that we could implement to support DSPs. There are things that we could do to implement to support the individuals that we're working with. And that takes time. So we are going to receive feedback from this pilot. We're going to revise our structure, and then we're going to grow from it. Our goal is to create avenues of growth to allow implementation of technology and accommodations in the workplace, to empower and to implement AT and create capacity for DSPs and providers to support new individuals. And those new individuals are the ones that I've talked about, the ones that may have been on your waiting list for quite a while, or the ones that we are underserving. So the technology community practice is something that we are excited about and hope can grow to support folks. And if you have interest in it, I'll put a QR code up with the link as well. And those are things that we are doing to make sure that we're not missing anybody. We got to also roll with the time. I've seen other states have implemented technology in their workplaces, and it's time Iowa starts to put some sweat into it and some elbow grease into it. So here we are, we're doubling down and gonna keep going for it. So I look forward to seeing some names join that community of practice interest, and in about 3 or 4 months, we'll have another open group and we will get people together to talk about technology in the workplace. And that's all I have for the day. Well, are there any questions or comments?
On the technology in the workplace, have you guys been looking at chat GBT kind of stuff and how that could help individuals?
So how I started off in it was I joined Missouri and Massachusetts with their community of practices, what they had been doing. And we're focusing on like kind of specific. So they started with technology for individuals with vision impairments, and they talked from start of the day to end of the day, how to get them to and from work, how to support them with their services, visual impairments as well. Apps that help can see what kind of clothing you're wearing. That's a t-shirt that is blue, instead of so you got to get dressed. Is it that that they've had behaviors, they've had coping skills. We've done hearing impairments, we've done communication devices, mobility supports, and then Easter seals. And I had ours this morning, and we did one with kind of an overview of AT, and just we want to do an introduction because some folks, when we talk about AT, it's super overwhelming. Because technology is a scary word and it's always changing. So we want to make it user friendly. I've reached out to Apple, Android, Google, all of their accessibility stuff into their technology, and see how we can work with them, and to know what's kind of what we call native, already implemented in their work, implemented in their systems, and then what are apps that are non-native that are maybe paid. So we're looking at those options as well, but we're exploring all opportunities. And if there's something that you're really interested in learning more about, those are topics that we're gonna take on and guide. And
I'm just fascinated by ChatGPT. Like, I'm fascinated in all the ways that, because everything that I'm hearing just for the general workforce is that it's not a matter of that. Well, I mean, jobs are going to get replaced by ChatGPT, but the matter of keeping your job has more to do with we need to be teaching college students how to utilize ChatGPT instead of trying to keep them from using it. I mean, that on a more global scale, right? But then I'm also just fascinated in how can we increase employability for people with disabilities if a lot of the heavy lift for writing things can be done in that alternate format. That's just it's just a curiosity. It's Diane's pet interest, really is all it is.
I think it's great. I don't, if anybody hasn't messed with ChatGPT, I would highly recommend it just to look at and ask questions. I've used ChatGPT myself in my personal, endeavors. But if you ask it a question, it'll come up with an interesting information.
It wrote a letter of reference for me. We were trying to tell a PT how to write a letter so that we could get an adaptive device on a wheelchair. And it literally wrote the best thing I've ever seen. I'm like, if you guys ever get stuck on notes, maybe at the beginning of a shift, write into ChatGPT. What do you do? How would you write a note for this? Because sometimes it will give you ideas about how to address that topic with the individual. Anybody who wants to talk to me about it, I'm super fascinated by this subject.
It has some good information, and I've definitely asked it questions like, what are some communication devices you would recommend? And it came up with some apps and stuff, and I hadn't even thought about them. but
Yeah,
just
I mean, you have to
to
be
think
careful.
outside-
There was a lawyer who used it to write something, and it gave them all fake cases. Like it pulled from
Yeah.
sample cases as opposed to real cases. So like, don't let it be your brain, I guess is what I'm saying. But if you can learn how to,
Yep, it's
like-
ask the right questions and definitely double check your stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would.
evidently you should, evidently if you're a lawyer, you should do a case review because that dude got in a lot of trouble. But anyway, I just think it's fascinating. So I'm just interested. So
Yeah, well, I'll put that down as a to look into. All I know is ChatGPT is all the information that they put on ChatGPT is copywritten, so you can't take any of it and use it for yourself. So you'd have to edit it yourself to implement and use wherever you use it. So that
also, use your own brain. Don't let it try to be your. You can evidently get in
Exactly.
legal trouble for that. But it's very cool.
Yeah. Well, those are things that we're doing and implementing, and MFP has seen across the state, and we look forward to hearing more from everybody and working with you all.
I want to thank you so much, Tyler. And I want to encourage folks, Tyler touched today on populations that are really underserved or unserved. And my hope is that we can all work together to try to figure out how do we support all individuals with employment services who are interested. And I think, Tyler, you did a fabulous job of laying out some of the considerations and hesitations and dynamics that might still need to be unpacked with how we continue to build available services for all populations. And I don't know that we have all the answers, but I think the awareness that there are, and all of you know from your day in and day out work what some of those challenges and populations are. But what I saw today, Tyler, is just opening up that conversation across partners around, okay, this one's hard, but what can we do? Because just not serving them isn't a service to anyone. And so I just encourage us to continue these conversations. And if any of you have an interest in any of the things that Tyler shared or other topics that would build on how we could do kind of cross collaboration and maybe do some focused work on here's something that we're trying to figure out, but we think it might help to bring some other folks in, to have us collectively try to work on things. I just wanted to remind folks that our next Employment First Community of Practice will be July 13th, 1 to 2:30. We're still fine tuning topics, which is not typically how we've done the community of practice, but we're trying to coordinate it with some of the DIF grant work as well. So we will have a session and we will get out information prior to that on what the topic is. If you have topics that you would like to see addressed, or you have maybe something you would like to present to the group on, please just reach out to myself or to Jess Craho, and we'll work with you to figure out what we need. So thank you, everybody. If anybody else has any comments or questions for Tyler, we can hang on for a few minutes. And I hope that all of you have a great day. And thank you so much, Tyler. What a great presentation.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.